And I certainly welcome everybody to the room, and I'm sure that that Andy, Master Andy, and Sue also welcome everybody to the room since you are their audience. As we always do, we start out by thanking Ava so much for contributing her time in the evening to monitoring our program and for giving us space on her website. It's just, we really appreciate it, Ava, and thank you so very much. We also always start by waiting giving about 15 or 20 seconds for somebody to raise their hand in the room and say they'd like to say something. If there's anything pressing or urgent that somebody would like to contribute or ask, anything you'd like to ask, we will be quiet for a moment and let you ask that. If we hear nothing within 15 or 20 seconds, however, I will come back in and we'll start. So you've got a moment of silence, and I'm going to go get my other glasses.
And I'm going to apologize to Sir Dragon Z. From what I understand, we bumped him this week.
Sir Dragon Z was gracious enough to relinquish this week to you because of the honor that he extends to you. And he wanted you to see the other half of
the other half of the program, yeah.
Okay. Hearing no urgent or pressing issues, we're going to move on. And so Master Andy and Slave Sue are the MAST Ottowa chapter presidents, and we are very close friends. They're probably our closest friends within the community as well. So Master Andy, I will turn it over to you.
So this is a continuation, as it says on the slide. This is part 2 of our Navigating Emotionally Turbulent Communications. I think I took more of the lead last time, so I'm going to let Sue take more of the lead this time. She's not in the same location we are. I happen to be down visiting for business, and so Sue's at home, and I'm going to let her lead most of the conversation tonight.
And Sue, did you wish me to lock the camera on you, or are you going to stay as a voice?
My voice is much, much better than my face right now, so let's just leave it there.
I don't know about that one, but whatever you wish, it's your choice.
No, it's okay. I'm fine with a voice.
Very well. Carry on, voice.
The voice of Eastern Canada.
Yes.
Anyways. Just to let you know, Dr. Bob, I really appreciate you saying that we're friends of yours, and I'm really touched. I'm still not going to snuggle this weekend.
Very well. Yes, we are together this coming weekend at Fetish Flea in Providence.
Yes.
And she is declining to snuggle.
Do I get snuggles?
Boy needs to turn that issue over to Master.
Wait.
That's above his pay grade.
Hang on, this might get to turbulent communication. So let's start. So last time we talked, just kind of a quick recap for anybody who wasn't on the first call. We were talking about loaded conversations or crisis communication or crucial conversation, whatever term you want to call them that's a little bit politer than, oh shit, where did that come from, and we're ready to break up conversations. And so kind of what we went over was the idea that these loaded conversations come about when there's a miscommunication of some kind and somebody's not sure of what the other person said, or they didn't hear them correctly, or they have their own baggage tapes running in their head, and that sets them off, and they have a perceived threat of some kind. And so they feel that either their relationship is at risk, or their safety is at risk, or their integrity, but they feel threatened in some way. And it causes the body physically to go into high emotion responses, which are like fight and flight, or fight. Yeah. And how they actually experience physical reactions to high emotions. And one of the physical reactions is we lose blood to the brain, so we don't think as clearly, and logic is not our friend during those conversations. And kind of towards the end of the conversation, there was a lot of, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Oh yeah, I can remember those conversations. And so tonight we wanted to get into, you're in the middle of it, what do you do to get out of it? So I guess we can start, like that's a very brief recap, but is there anything that anybody wants to ask before we get into, or even comment on before we get into, now what the hell do I do?
I would say no, because on my part, everything I would ask has to do with exactly what you're about to speak about.
All right, then next slide, please.
Next slide. Coming.
How's that subtle?
Click that tab. What is so lovely about having Master Andy here is that he lives in the world of computers, and I live in the world of being 70. And so anytime that we run into the slightest glitch, I walk away and say, okay, Mr. Andy, here's the problem. He says, fabulous, I've got the solution. Clicking the tab qualifies. Over to you.
So you took away my IT help tonight.
Yes.
I was trying to help in IT in two locations at once. Okay.
So one of the things that we talked about last time was recognizing what is unsafe dialogue. And there's a couple of things that happen when the dialogue, your conversation is getting to the point where it's really not safe to be in for either one of you. And it's either somebody's becoming very, very defensive, and so they're shutting down. They're not participating in the conversation. Their body language is pulled into themselves, that kind of stuff, very one-word answers, or somebody's becoming aggressive towards you and accusing you of a lot of different things, and just using a lot of the communication, the bad communication skills that we've heard about, like gunny sacking, where they take things from the past 10 years and throw it at you at once, and like, well, way back in '94, you hit my elbow, or whatever, something stupid like that. That is absolutely no relevant, but it's an indication that it is becoming unsafe. Either you're going to get hurt or the other person's going to get hurt. And so learning to recognize when your conversations are getting to that point of being unsafe. And that will help you learn when to start to stop that spiraling and work around getting somebody to that unsafe place. Also, you want to check what role you're playing in the conversation. Are you playing the victim? So everything that the person says, you're taking it personally and feeling like you're being attacked. Or are you playing the role of the person who it's always your fault? And that's one that I fall into a lot, is Andy and I will get into conversations, and then all of a sudden I'll say, oh, I can do nothing right for you, can I? And it's a communication role that stops him from being able to say anything else to me, because he doesn't want to validate that feeling, doesn't want to validate that statement, but how can you argue with me on that point? Because that's what I believe at that moment.
And that's a challenging situation. We just had it here not too long ago. Is when you're on the other side of that, you hear those statements where somebody says, you know, I'm doing everything wrong, and all you're doing is telling me everything I'm doing wrong. You're not acknowledging anything I'm doing right, or something like that. And which in our lifestyle, that's a common situation between the big letter type and the little letter type. As a big letter type, if you're giving direction and giving criticism about different things, it can feel very negative after a while if you're not. And it happens a lot it happens in our household quite a bit, especially when I come back from trips, because I travel a lot and I notice the things that are wrong in the house. And so we go through a list of 3 or 4 things fairly quickly of these things were wrong, and then I do everything wrong.
That is, I so identify with that. I have lots of experience along those lines.
So and you never complimented me on any of these. You haven't complimented me on anything. And
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you, from the other side, you want to say, but actually I did compliment you these ways, but you've got to do that diplomatically, because if you just come out and lay that right off the bat as here's the things that I have complimented you on, it's actually going to get their back up even more.
I just throw in a comment that as an ASPE where the location of things were so critical, I have lots and lots of experience in exactly what you're talking about. I'll come back. I also have a long history of a lot of travel. Mm-hmm. And I would walk back in, and the room, what she'd done to the room, she cleaned it. And the result of the cleaning, just as fingernails on a chalkboard. Mm. And I would explode the minute I would walk in the room. I get it.
Great.
Yet another thing you guys have in common, it seems.
Yet another thing.
And Andy doesn't explode on me, but in our household,
more sophisticated in terms of people skills.
Sometimes.
I'm glad you said that. In our household, no comment is a positive comment. He notices everything except for my hair. So if there's no comment on it, that's positive. But that's different from my thinking. So it's a catch that we get into, and at that point, I think one of the #1 rules to remember when you're in these type of conversations is the other person who's gripped by emotion, their perception is the reality that you're dealing with. Don't try to change their reality, because you can't.
Right.
Deal with their reality as if it was real and solve that issue. Help them solve it for themselves.
Right.
So don't argue that their reality isn't real. And that's where the don't try to use logic comes in.
Which is difficult for me, because I'm a very logic-based person.
It's true. So, I know. So on the slide, I've put words like investigate, where the miscommunication is, and investigate to understand their point of view. And I chose the words investigate because ask questions.
Great.
Treat it like it is an investigation. You're trying to figure out, what is the other person hearing? What is their perception of what's going on? And ask questions to help clarify their point of view. You don't have to agree with their point of view. You just want to understand their point of view. Yes?
And let me mention that you're on a point that's particularly close to me. And if anybody that's in the room wishes a list of books on using questions to leading with questions, I have 4 or 5 books that are really outstanding resources for developing, for how you phrase questions and using questions as a leader. So for those of you who are not familiar with my personal website, it's powerexchangeeditor@yahoo.com. And if Master would type that into the chat window, this is an area of extreme interest to me. Rather than jump up to the shelf behind and bring the books out, some of them are here and some are at the office. If If you'll write to me, I'll send you those resources. That's a tremendously key point. And my immediate comment to you, Slave Sue, is that when you, in my experience, when I walk into that situation and I should be asking questions, I've already become reactive, and I can't gain enough control of myself to ask questions. I'm outraged.
So what is the break? How do you break that?
That goes into state change. And again, if you want more information on state change, write to me so that I don't take over this conference, this webinar tonight. But you have to develop a method where slave can signal master that there's a problem and that the master is going out of control emotionally, and master then needs a method. I'm a big advocate of developing protocols ahead of time so that you have something to rely on instead of finding yourself out on a limb without an established protocol. That you have a protocol that resets, that reestablishes a thinking state instead of an emotional state, and from there you can go to a protocol for asking questions. But I have years of difficulty.
There you go.
Where's that ready from?
Where's that ready? Exactly right.
Yes.
And by the way, I will also say that because of these kinds of upsets, that's where my former slave and I developed the protocol that my given name of Bob was an emotional safe word. And when she said Bob, that was the trigger in our relationship to do a state change and to try and do something else. At that time, I did not yet know about using questions in a leadership sense.
Oh, Sue's just, okay, we're going to give it back to Sue here?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, leads really nicely into the concept of intervention statements and empathy statements. It's not so much questioning, but it's being solid in your position and helping the person to feel calm and feel safe so that you can gain control of it, the situation. So intervention statements are statements that you can plan ahead of time that just become part of your casual, your conversation. My favorite one in our relationship an awful lot is, I don't think I understand what you are saying. Can you help me understand this? Because it doesn't say that I'm wrong. It doesn't say I'm letting go of my position. It's inviting conversation, and it's accepting that this is how Anne's position on it, or anybody else's position on it. And also, when you ask somebody, can you help me to understand it, you're then forcing them to think about what exactly are they saying. Because they then have to think about a different way to say it, a different words, so they have to stop and think about the intention and the message to deliver it a different way. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
And that's a big thing for Sue and I. Sue's, as we've talked about in the first webcast, Sue's more emotionally based and I'm more logical based. And our conversations completely miss each other. We can say the same thing, but we don't understand what each other are saying.
Right.
And so rewording and working with each other to reword to get it back to us understanding what each other are saying, right, is really something we can go round and round with a few times before we can both understand the conversation that's going on.
I'll just throw in here in the for what it's worth department that even discussing this point is making me outrageously reactive.
I don't understand, Dr. Bob, what about this is making you reactive. Can you help me understand that?
Yes, it's throwing me back into all of my reactions previously. I'm not sure I'm interruptible. Here's the deal. So you walk in, you've been gone a couple of days or a week, and you walk in, and one would think that after living together for a while, that slave would know what to and not to do in the house setup, and to walk in and to find still yet again, and I'm trying to keep from being even more emotional, still yet again, it's not done that way.
Right.
Is
Be very frustrating.
Big hot button.
Yes. Okay.
And because we didn't speak the same language at the level that Master Andy is referring to, communication ships in the night, passing ships in the night. Because we didn't speak the same language, she's speaking emotionally, I speaking cerebrally. It was very difficult to communicate how to change. So ultimately the conclusion you have to reach is either A, slave is untrainable, or slave is not the right slave for this person, or this person needs an awful lot of additional education and communication skills in order to be with this other person.
And that can really hurt the relationship when you have those mindsets.
Yeah, I think you completely missed out. Sorry, was I talking over somebody?
No.
Nope.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I think you've completely missed another option there, which is investigate and explore when you're not in those moments. What is it about those moments that is driving you bonkers?
That's why I have all the resources on asking questions. This is all recent. I figured this out, but it's been it takes a while.
Yeah. So, like, are you feeling disrespected? Are you feeling like?
I'm just fucking astonished.
Okay.
I'll be quiet. You'll have an emotional outburst out of me if I keep going.
Okay. Well, we'll move on then.
Move on.
Well, that's fine.
We can discuss it this weekend.
So the idea is like to really investigate a lot of the stuff and ask a lot of questions in the moment to diffuse it, as well as outside of the moment to understand what's happening for the other person as best you can, and learning how to fight, which is something that unfortunately we don't learn how to do in relationships. All kinds of Cosmo articles on how to flirt, but there's nothing on how to fight. So the kind of the big thing that I wanted to spend some time on, or we wanted to spend some time on, was the use of empathy statements and what exactly is an empathy statement. So, and basically it's very similar to rephrasing, but its purpose is to short circuit the emotions and cut right through and cut to the chase of, okay, we're going to work together on this. It has two parts. One that labels the feelings that you're hearing, and the other is to identify what you think the issue is, what you're perceiving the other person is saying to you. Big thing to remember with empathy statements is it's not admitting you agree. It's not about you think they're right. It's saying, I recognize this feeling and I'm connecting with you because I can understand frustration. And I understand this is what you're frustrated about. So some other examples of empathy statements are sounds like this economy has caused you some worry, which is pretty straightforward. The situation is the economy that's causing somebody stress, and the emotion is the worry of it all. Dealing with 4 kids and 3 dogs must be really overwhelming. So this one uses a gentle assumption of emotion. It's not as direct, and it allows the person to engage in conversation about what they are actually feeling. And it's you're not projecting onto them what they're feeling. Studies have shown the easiest way to shut down any conversation with anybody is to suggest that what they are feeling is bad or mad. So judge and make them feel horrible about what they're feeling. I probably quoted that wrong. So another example is it can be confusing to figure out home loan paperwork for the first time. This one refers to the situation without specifically putting the person into it. So it's not a judgment on their skill level or their intelligence or anything like that. It's making the statement that a lot of people have issues and don't understand different things. These aren't really relationship type examples. So that's kind of empathy statements. Some of the highlights is to listen to the person. You want to make sure that you're actually engaged in the listening process. So your body language is open and inviting and things like that. Keep eye contact, but not constant. Don't stare them down, that kind of stuff. Recognize the emotions being presented. Don't dismiss somebody. Always remember their perception is reality. So if they're standing there yelling at you saying, I am so frustrated that it's snowing, and the other Canadians in the room can completely appreciate this, you know that there's no point in arguing about them being, like, it's silly to just be frustrated that it's snowing if you live in Canada. Of course it snows. It's February. That's part of life. But by dismissing that feeling, it dismisses them, and you lose that connection. Also, completely remove yourself. So it's not just about don't take it personally. This terminology, I understand, puts you in the equation. It makes it about you. And at that moment, the other person just wants you to hear them. Part of listening is allowing them to feel like they're important, like what they're saying matters. So stay away from I statements and spit yourself out of it. So not even things like, you know, I see that you're really frustrated that it's snowing. I find it really frustrating that it's cold. It makes it about you at that time. And they just want it. I think it's a really common catch because a lot of people are taught to connect with somebody on the level of a commonality. But at that point, the person just wants to be understood. And empathize. Understand how they feel. Everybody can understand anger. Well, no, Dr. Bob can understand anger. Sorry, I had to go there.
Well, we've got you the whole weekend.
So you don't have to be in the exact same situation to understand the emotion that's being felt. And let the person know that you recognize what they're feeling at that moment. So And empathizing can also be used to recognize positive emotions, such as excitement or happiness. And this is one that Andy uses a lot with me because, yeah, we're talking about the negative spiral. Being bipolar, oh boy, I can get pretty hyper. And so using the empathy statement of, I understand you're really excited about going to Rhode Island. It's exciting, it's overwhelming, this is awesome. Helps me connect enough to be able to listen to the sentence after, which is usually, make sure you pack everything you need so that you can leave on time and you can do the things you need to do, that kind of stuff. So it can be in those overwhelming, exciting times as well. And don't assign an emotion with a derogatory tone, as this will, likely worsen the situation. As an example, don't say, you're confused about this? I don't understand. How could you be missing this? Oh. So that's it. Presentation.
Do that again, Sue?
Pardon?
I need that sentence again. You broke up.
I said, this is it. This is my presentation. And I'm really glad I'm not on video because I just did the whole ta-da thing with my arms twice. I'm such a kid. So, conversation?
And we had a lot more conversation, a lot more questions from the audience last time. Oh, we've got a hand from Nikita and Ursula.
Go ahead.
Hello, it's Ursula here. I was just, one of the things that I've been working on with this one actually has been changing my reality. And I know you talked about that a little bit earlier on, Sue, about how it's really hard to, it can be a really hard thing for an individual to do, because a lot of our reality is so wrapped up in who we are and our past, and we're so conditioned a lot of the time to feel a certain way about things. But I'll just give you an example that happened to me just today about Miss saying that her teacup was really full. All right, now my first reaction to that is feeling bad because I made her teacup too full, so I'm taking it as a criticism. But that is how I'm conditioned. That's actually one of the social pitfalls that I tend to fall into. If I'm being criticized by Miss, I'm darn well going to know it. A lot of the time, the person that she is she just says logical statements. She just points out logical things. Just at random. They don't mean anything. The criticism is entirely my perception of what she's saying. So I have to, so I think I gave her a look, and then I sat down and I just thought about it for a minute, and it was like, this is not something that she is trying to do. This is entirely my perception. Because really, if she wants to criticize me about something that I'm doing, I'm going to know. It's not just going to be some logical random statement like that. And the reason I know this,
simple observation.
Yeah, the reason I know this is because we have sat down and talked about some of her personality quirks and some of my personality quirks at times when we were both feeling, fairly calm. And it is one of the things that she does. She just makes logical, obvious, random statements like that. They don't actually mean anything. So being able to change my reality and then just let go of any upset that I was feeling really helped me out. And I don't know if you call that changing your reality, but it is, I am trying to actually change my social conditioning. I'm trying to change the way that I react to things because so much of it is my own perception. I see Dr. Bob had his hand up there.
My comment is it's an issue of commenting on the action, not on the person. So I would, if Master were to say, my cup is over full, I would say, I'll take care of that, Master. I wouldn't take that as a personal comment that I had filled the cup too full, although that's implicit. I would simply take it as an observation of fact. I empathize a lot with you in that regard, Ursula. And
I'm going to throw something out here.
Go ahead.
I didn't actually say that it was too full.
No, it just said
all I
full.
pointed out was, oh, my teacup is very full.
That's nothing.
And from my standpoint, it was purely an observation of, oh, I better be careful with this because it's full enough that I could spill it when I take it from you.
If I knew that was your speech pattern, I would then ask, Master, would you like me to take some of the tea out?
And we've talked about it enough that I know that she does make just obvious random statements like that.
They're never random.
Okay, no, they're not. They're very logical. They're just pointing out. They just point out the obvious, right?
Very
yes,
much so.
and that's one of your personality quirks. You just point out the obvious.
Ursula, the Master never makes random.
that would be your master.
But coming to the aid of Ursula, master speak, slave do. Conditioning.
Just absorb.
Master makes an obvious statement. Isn't that an action?
Then slave would ask, Master, is there an action that slave can take to make Master more comfortable with that?
Oh.
Getting a time out.
And I'm going to say that actually was part of the conversation after she took her brief half second was, no, it's fine. That was my comment.
That's fine.
So at that point, there's nothing for her to do.
Correct.
Yeah, Bob is giving the politically correct answer.
Yes. As opposed to?
The reality is, were I to say, wow, this class is really full.
I would say apologies.
And then in my mind think, I need to be careful. Bob would say, he would take it upon himself as the fact that he had done something wrong and that he needed to correct this and be super apologetic.
Yes, that's true. All of the above.
Instead of recognizing that this is just an observation.
So in other words, Ursula and I need to have a time that we go out together and we have some slave-to-slave discussions.
Well, the understanding that you're giving a politically correct answer instead of the reality that you do take these observations of mine, as Nikita observes that the glass is a bit full. I do the same thing, and you take it as a personal notification that you have failed in some way when it's just an observation.
Well, a boy would go on to say that he then writes it down as a protocol adjustment. And he usually writes it on a piece of paper, which he'd be very happy to get up and go demonstrate to Andy, who is laughing at me. I take it as a protocol adjustment, write it on a piece of paper, and stick it where I'm not going to miss it the next time.
Yeah.
Now, the trick is I think knowing your master or your mistress is what they say. Is this a hint? Are they trying to give you a hint to take action?
Sure.
Or are they just making a comment?
I'm not that subtle.
She's really not. She's really not, which is probably why we're a good match, because sometimes subtlety is completely lost on me. Anyway, thank you.
I think Sue tried to break in, and then I know
Lost the battle.
And Sir Dragon Z had his hand up a little bit earlier, but Sue, did you want to say something before we go to Dragon Z?
No, I was just going to continue along this conversation, but it is fine to go to Dragon Z, and I will send Ursula an email later.
Thank you. Very great, very good conversation tonight. I'm very much enjoying this because I'm hearing it from the other side now, from others within the community that aren't, for example, putting pressure on me when I'm hearing it from a partner. But when I hear it from a partner, I'm going to be defensive a little bit because I feel like I'm not being heard, maybe in some of the things I'm doing, where part of it is what she's feeling also, that she's not being heard and we're not understanding each other very well. So I hope that all made sense. So hearing now how you expressed that tonight really helped me to understand how my partners, it was important for me to listen and really listen and repeat what I hear them say, that I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not there to agree that something was right or wrong. It's just about acknowledging that you're hearing what they're saying. And I was taking things defensively before, and that's not a safe place to be.
Doesn't help anybody. It makes things worse usually.
At the same time, though, I think it's also really important, in the moment, don't take it personally. Don't react to it like a personal attack, because that's just going to perpetuate the spiral. However, take what the person is saying into consideration. And when the moment isn't as heated, think about what they're saying, because maybe you are at fault a little bit. Maybe whatever it is that you're doing can be altered and shifted. Like Andy gave the example earlier of a situation not too long ago with him and I, where I sat down and said, okay, like this is hurting me. It is hurting me that you don't tell me positive things and I only hear negative. And he didn't defend himself in any way, shape, or form. By the end of the conversation, though, it was very clear that he heard what was causing me the stress. He heard the behavior that he was doing that needed to be shifted to help me. So he didn't dismiss what I was saying because I was being irrational or anything like that. But in that moment, he didn't become defensive. So when we say don't take it personally, it's don't take it as a personal attack that you need to defend yourself from. Listen to what the person is saying, though, because obviously it's a behavior you're doing. It's the same as if you come through the door every day and poke them in the eye, they're eventually going to say to you, you know, my eye's really sore and I can't see. Could you stop poking me in the eye every day? And that might be delivered as a complete meltdown. So don't get defensive, but don't.
I thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, because it's a little harder in the moment, obviously, when things are. And I am pretty good in general about keeping my cool, and I don't usually let go of things, but usually what I'll do is shut down. But in this discussion right here, right now, there's no pressure. So I am hearing this from a totally different perspective. And it makes me understand a lot more where my partners have come from in the past with sharing with me issues or troubles they have. And I'm guilty of the observations. I'm huge on that. So I can see now where that's going to have to be maybe a protocol when I meet somebody, that just so you know, I make lots of observations. I'm not criticizing people, I'm not putting people down, but I see things. And you're going to hear me say, I see things, you know, about other people and about yourself. Don't take it personally.
Go ahead, Paul.
A couple of things. One of the phrases that Master has developed that we write about and recommend highly, and we speak about a lot, is the phrase, when you say X or when you do X, I take that to mean. So here's the deal. Our realities are built on our own experiences, and my realities surely are not Master Andy's realities or Slave Sue's realities or Sir Dragon Z's or Ursula's or Nikita's. So we all have our own different realities, and unfortunately we all think our realities are correct. So when somebody else does something that conflicts with our realities, in my particular case, speaking in the first person, I'm astonished that they've done X. And I have a certain amount of recovery time to try and figure out how in the world they would have chosen to do X in light of what they know about me. So the phrase that Master has developed for this is, when you do X, it makes, I take that to mean Y. Because then the other person can react to the Y and say, period. The other thing the other concept has to do with Slave Caroline's often mentioned discussion of Carl Jung and Jungian projection. So what Jungian projection comes about because you project onto the other person your own reactions. So
right.
Somebody does X, your slave does X, and you as master think instantly that if I said that to my master, it would mean this. The trouble is, therefore, the trouble is it didn't mean that. The slave isn't using the same logic set, or the other person isn't using the same logic set. So when they've said something, you actually are pretty clueless about what they meant about it unless you probe. So you're back to the books on how to frame questions and leading with questions. I'll stop. Sucks the air out of the room, doesn't it?
No, it hurts my brain a little bit because it's late for me. But I think on the Jungian projection thing, something also to take into consideration is when we see the reflection of things that we dislike about ourselves in somebody else or in somebody else's behavior, our reaction, in my opinion, matches our distaste for that trait about ourselves.
You're correct. You're completely correct.
So,
enlightened point of view.
Something that drives me absolutely squirrely is somebody being hypocritical. And I know that that comes from something within myself about not feeling like I have matched my own integrity or that I have honored my own word. And so it's directly linked to my own personal integrity. And the thought of being hypocritical myself is very difficult for me to swallow. And it's painful, some of that stuff as well. So it's much easier for me to project some of that stuff onto other people because then I don't have to own it. And I bring that up because when you're dealing with somebody who is doing projection, if you try to put it back on them, you're hurting them, and they're going to fight it that much harder.
You don't necessarily need to turn it around with respect, Sue. It's a matter of realizing it yourself in terms of framing your response.
Absolutely, and that's kind of where they, do the self-analysis after the fact of, is there any validity to what this person is saying? And if there is no validity in your own behavior, then in that downtime, help them face that glitch or that perception of themselves. But it gives you insight into what you can do between those times so that the next time it hits, you're a little bit better prepared for it. And Ursula kind of mentioned the idea about changing your reality. And like this conversation is just about what do you do in the moment. But there's a whole slew of stuff that you do between the outbursts. There's a lot of work that has to happen between it, because you know it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Couples fight. It's in.
Oh, go ahead. Oh. Okay. Yeah, Sue and I spent much of the first 2/3 of our relationship. We don't do it as much now, but where we would decompose fights next day, deconstruct a fight the next day, and what we did right and what we did wrong, so that we could improve on it the next time. In our kind of relationships, that doesn't necessarily sound like it's something you need to do, or that you should do, because people, this whole the dominant is right thing. You know what? We live in relationships. We're in a relationship with somebody else, and this is the way that we make our relationships better, improve our communications. We literally would sit down and have a conversation about what we did better on the previous fight in the fight we just finished the day before, and say, hey, yes, we're moving in the right direction, which also helped maintain our relationship during those tough times, because we could see we were moving forward in the way we were managing our relationship. So it allowed us to not feel quite so down about the struggles our relationship was in at that time.
I know that there's a hand up. Was one day enough time to have the emotions go away? That was
the thing, is we got past this. This was once the whole situation, once we kind of resolved the situation to there was no emotions and it was over, then we'd deconstruct that. Yeah. And that's one thing there. And before I pass off to Dragon Z, because I actually want to go to something he said, is about shutting down. Historically, I'm very much into shutting down when I'm when there's an emotional struggle going on. And it's taken some work to get past that shutting down and not run off. And one is shutting down was a way of reducing anger, because if I didn't shut down, I'd explode. And so it was, if I shut myself down, I'm not going to explode. And then, but I've learned how to get past that and work through it. And now I don't run away from conversations, Sue. But Sue also recognizes that I kind of sit in the chair and just listen as she's throwing stuff at me. As she does it a little slower now, she's not throwing quite as fast. That way I come out of it a little easier. So we both adapted to that. As I'll just sit in my chair and she'll kind of tell me the way she feels, a little slower than she used to, and with a little less emotion than she used to. And then eventually we get a good conversation going. And it's taken us both to adapt to that.
And how many years?
We're at 10 years now. So, yes, this is not something you do overnight. Dragon Z?
Thank you, sir. I just want to say thank you for what you just mentioned there about debriefing after a, let's say, heated discussion, argument. I hate arguments. I don't want to argue. I hate arguments. I never thought of, I think I've done that to a very small degree, but not directly. I have done that with scenes. When I've done a scene with somebody, especially somebody new, I get them, if they will, a few days later to write it up for me and read it a few times, and then I'll go over it with them so I can learn what it is that was good, what was negative, what they were thinking, because I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what's the thoughts that are going in their head when I got the floggers or whips beating on them and doing whatever. And I mean, very similarly, like in the middle of an argument or a heated discussion, you know, we don't see what's inside our other partner's minds and whatnot. We see what's on the surface, But to be able to then debrief a day or two or three later when the emotions have gone away, things have settled down, to then be able to go, you know, where did this come from? How did it become? Why did it get to where? What did we do positive? What do we do negative? How do we adjust so that we can limit this happening again? Would be a great thing. And what you said there also about about myself there, that I said down. I'm exactly that. The reason I'm shutting down is that I've gotten to a point. I put time in here. I've tried to listen to a certain amount of time. It's not going anywhere. The emotions are too high, usually on the other side, usually, not always. And if I don't shut down, I'll blow up. And that could be ugly. I don't want to get ugly. I want to be in control so that I pull away until I can deal with it.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's when you're in a position of an unsafe dialogue. Because if the person is wanting a reaction, they're going to poke and poke and poke and poke and poke till they get that reaction of whatever kind. If somebody is emotional, they want validation that you're hearing them. So when you shut down, they're not getting that validation. So in my opinion, I would use terminology like, I need to go calm down before I can give you my full attention. I really want to give you my attention on this. Can we take an hour breather? Can we take an overnight breather? I will come back to this tomorrow morning. But letting them know what's going on for you and that you value what they're saying and you're trying to protect the both of you. My 2 cents.
And that goes, oh, go ahead, Dragon.
I fully agree, Slave Sue. Thank you for saying that as eloquently as you did. Shutting down coldly doesn't solve anything, but allowing the other person to know that we're not in a great space right now. I need to take some time out, along with I think the both of us need to take some time out. We can talk about it later, but right now I need to shut down. Otherwise, it's going to get ugly, and at least they have some idea as to why or why it's happening.
Yeah, it allows them, it gives them that little bit that they need. And for clarification, you know, Andy and I have been together for 10 years, and we've been fighting for 10 years simply because we've been together for 10 years. But we've really only been working on this technique for probably the past 3.5, 4 years. And like Andy talks about debriefing, we actually just had a debriefing this past weekend where we had the conversation about him not recognizing things done well and just pointing out the things that need improvement. And that debriefing actually included a happy dance, because we got up and we walked away and I did a happy dance and I turned around and I looked at him and I said, oh my God, we just did it. We just had a heated conversation that could have really blown up, and we got through it without raising our voices, without being angry at each other, and without feeling attacked. And all of this stuff happened. All of this stuff that we're talking about, that we're teaching, we used it all, and it worked wonderfully. So there was a happy dance debrief.
I tend to promote talking sticks to pull emotion out of discussions and reduce them to facts. Also, we're right around 9 o'clock, but I'll also suggest gently that the discussions that we've been having concern as much as anything else the type of MS structure that you have. For any of you that have read the first series of books before I became more enlightened would realize that I wouldn't have approached any of these discussions this way. The way to work with me is spelled out in the protocol manual. If it's not in the protocol manual, I'm not interested in it. Go back and reread the protocol manual. and I really wasn't particularly concerned with my slave's feelings about anything. That didn't concern me. The slave is property. I do understand it's a different MS structure, and I do recognize that completely.
There's people that live in that MS structure very successfully. And
I lived that way a long time,
yes.
but again, I'm an ASPE. So it was very hard for me to, the whole concept that somebody else has emotions is actually fairly new, believe it or not, because I get to them cerebrally. If you don't express, if I don't get a facial gesture, I don't know that you're having an emotion.
When you get a talking stick upside the head, you'll know I'm having an emotion.
Oh, that's why we used Bob as the safe word, as the emotional safe word. It would take that for me to realize that. I mean, I can hardly tell you the number of times that I finally developed the phrase. I hear that you are speaking. I understand your words. However, I'm not making any sense out of what you're saying.
And she took that really well, I'm sure.
She had no option but that. I said, say it again and don't use those words. As I said, don't get me started.
Andy does the same thing. He just says it differently.
Yes, I do.
The conversation's over. We're not talking anymore until you can tell me something you haven't already told me.
3 times or 4 times. Yes.
I understand that.
Yes. So.
As do I.
Now, perhaps I should send Andy home, Master Andy home, with the book 22 Things a Woman Must Know If She Loves a Man with Asperger's Syndrome.
Yeah, actually, that's in the back of your books. I know about we know about that title. We refer people to it all the time. Yes.
I think he's suggesting I might be serving a closet ASPE.
Right, that is exactly what he was suggesting.
Me? Ask? Why would that be? Okay. I'd like to thank Bob and Jen for having this webcast. I think and Ava for providing the hosting for this service. It's a wonderful service that we all get to benefit from.
Thank you so much. Are there any last-minute questions? And I will tell you that 2 weeks from now, we have Master Joe and Slave Kim from Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to be speaking about issues. I've made a point of asking him to make this extremely pragmatic. And the topic generally is, what's Master do when slave is incapacitated, and what does slave do when Master is incapacitated? And they each had a round of this. And they're currently going through a round where Master Joe is largely incapacitated. He has well, we'll leave it at that. He has some medical issues that are altering his capability even to get around, and Slave Kim is having to deal with that. And previously, she has had knee replacements that made it impossible for her to serve as she previously had served. And we've discussed this at some length. And we've had webinars before on aging and illness, 2 different webinars, one on aging and one on illness in an MS structure. In this case, I'm asking to come up to list out specifically what they've had to change by way of pragmatic protocols. What have they actually done differently in each case? And they will be sharing that with us 2 weeks from now. So I certainly hope that you'll join us. They are 15 hours ahead of us. So for them, it's the middle of the day on a Wednesday, which is, I always find just fascinating. So, and also because they're in the Southern Hemisphere, we're sitting up here in the cold north, and they're down there in sweltering heat, which is also sort of a fascinating.
Whoa. Cold north.
Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah. The
Too many Canadians here, Bob. Too many.
Yeah, it was 85 degrees in Texas today.
Yeah, we're
80 degrees.
pretty toasty.
Yeah, it's pretty nice here this week.
Yeah. I will also say that for those of you that are frequently on the webinar, Ursula, Nikita, and Dragon Z, and John and Tandir, you may recall that Master Michael, current international master slave, Master Michael and slave Angie, arrived in Melbourne this afternoon, about 3 or 4 hours ago, to be met by Master Joe and slave Kim. And they've just come down from Sydney, where they've spent the last week doing presentations. And I have not yet heard whether my introduction to them with Peter Masters came off. But they're down in Melbourne doing a string of presentations until the weekend. And so that's it. A couple of hands. Sir Dragon Z went up first, and then Sue.
I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Bob, for the books. They came today. Signed, sealed, delivered, and I want to say thank you very much. I got all 3 finally.
Well, actually, Master Andy and Slave Sue remailed those for you.
You noticed they had Canadian stamps on them.
I didn't. I thought I saw from Robert Rubel, so I just thought it was from Bob.
No, because I had not filled in my return address because I thought the Canadian Post would be curious about that. So I put my name on it, but they used their return address.
I was too excited to look at the details. I just ripped it open.
Yeah,
what I'd like to just put out there for a few people to know is that I run a Whippet group up here in Victoria. For the last 2 years, Lodestar and I, myself, we've been running this successfully. Once a month, we do a Whip group. And we just confirmed this week that Robert Dante will be up here for a weekend intensive, so 3 days of Whip activities in mid-July, the 17th to 19th. So if any of you are going to be on the West Coast here this summer in July, we would love to have you in Victoria, where it's always wonderful and beautiful. Not 85 degrees, but it's wonderful and beautiful here. And we would love to have you up here to join us with Robert Dante and throwing lots of whips.
Cool. He's a nice guy.
I got that impression on the phone with them within minutes. It was like when I met yourself, Bob, and that I just felt a connection with him right away.
Nice guy.
Thank you.
And Sue?
So we'll be in Victoria, July 17th to the 19th.
Maybe. We'll see.
But you will be in Providence this weekend in the snow and the cold.
That's the fetish sleeve. Yeah.
Jen, I'm still in the snow and the cold. I'm going south. Ought to be warmer.
Yeah, but you're going to more snow than we've got.
You're going south straight into a storm.
Yes.
I can't find that storm, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, we've already discussed packing enough medications and clothing to stay Sunday night against our will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I have things for you. We need to talk about Peter Masters. That's why my hand went up. I have a crush.
Go ahead.
No. I have a crush. He's my husband.
Oh, a crush. Yeah, he has the best website of any BDSM person I've ever seen. He has a wiki.
Yes.
And he created his last book by religiously writing one article a week for a year, and then he pulled it together into a book. I'm very fond of Peter. He's just marvelous.
Me too.
He's one of these guys where you, if you were having a kink event and he walked into the room, you'd wonder how this guy wandered into the wrong room. He's what I've run across very few people in my life that managed to pull off vanilla so successfully.
Can't see what it looks like though, because I have it in my head. In my head, he's like 6'1", and he can do like a whole picture of Marilyn Monroe in dots with his whip on my back. He's very, very skilled. He's like blonde hair, blue eyes. Kind of like Andy.
Bear in mind he's the head of UT for the University of Australia in Sydney.
No, he's my secret.
He's a very clever guy.
So.
That's it. Closing down.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Night to all.
Sue and Ava, and to everyone.
That's it.
Thank you.